Council Planning meeting of August 24th. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. by recognizing the traditional keepers of this land and specifically our neighbors of the Alderville First Nation with a formal territorial acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the municipality of Brighton is located on the Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory and is the traditional territory of the Mississauga. The Council of the Municipality of Brighton respectfully acknowledges that the Mississauga Nation are the collective stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We'll also note that today is Ukraine Independence Day, and the municipality of Brighton continues to stand in solidarity with Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. Brighton, our council, and our citizens continue to show deep concern for the humanitarian toll the invasion will take on Ukraine and its citizens. I'm also pleased to announce that today is Councillor Emily Rowley's birthday. Happy birthday, Councillor Rowley. I hope you had a fine celebration. They all are, every single one from the age of 3 on up. I'd also like to welcome Ron Warren. Ron is our brand new manager of approvals. Ron has spent 25 years in municipal government, or most recently with Clarington as their manager of development review. Ron holds a master's in town planning and resource development, is a professional land use planner, and is a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners and Ontario Professional Planners. So welcome, Ron, and thank you for joining Brighton Municipal staff. We move into the approval of the agenda. The first item is a request to add something to the agenda, moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council amend the August 24th, 2022 planning agenda to add a housekeeping bylaw to execute a development agreement with Mike and Lori Van Harlem to section 8.7 of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Pardon me? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion to approve the agenda as amended, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council approved the August 24th, 2022 planning meeting agenda as amended. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And now, members of council, I'll ask if you have any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. Deputy Mayor, it's 8.7 on the agenda.
I have to declare on 8.7 because they're clients of mine.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just the one. There are no delegations this evening, which brings us straight into the statutory public meeting, moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council move into the statutory public meeting, August 24th, 2022 at 6:34 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Municipality of Brighton takes steps beyond the requirement of the Planning Act to engage the community in land use planning initiatives. The municipality also holds a statutory public meeting on the planning application and then receives a staff report with a recommendation on which council will make a decision. After council has made our decision, any person or public body may appeal council's decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, as long as they have made an oral submission at this meeting or provided comments in writing to the clerk's office and requested notice of the decision from the clerk's office. This is also true of any person or public body that wishes to participate in an appeal. For details of or information on appealing decisions of council, please visit our municipal website or contact the clerk's office. And I will also note that if you do come up to speak during the statutory public meeting, the clerk does have a register. We'd ask you to complete the information and sign it. Is that the request? Just the information, so just name and contact info? Yeah, thank you. That brings us to our first item in the statutory public meeting, which is with regard to 356 Whites Road. The applicants are Cecil and Laurel McCoy. Consent rezoning application, file numbers B05 2022, B06 2022, and Z04 2022. Again, it's 356 Whites Road and a vacant parcel with no civic address. This evening's meeting is with regard to a consent and zoning bylaw files I've already read. The purpose of the public meeting is to address requirements under the Planning Act for hosting a public meeting before council makes a decision and to obtain public input toward making any decision on the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment. So Mrs. Deck, by what method and on what date was notice of the consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications given?
Notice of the consent and zoning bylaw amendment application was sent by first-class mail on August 2nd, 2022 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all the agencies as required under the Planning Act. In addition, a signed notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment?
The purpose of consent application B05-2022 is to sever a 0.28 acre portion of the property located at 356 Whites Road and add it to a severed portion of the property from the vacant parcel to the east with no civic address, created through consent application B06-2022. This application will result in the retained parcel at 356 Whites Road having a total lot area of approximately 2.12 acres with 87.01 meters of frontage on Whites Road. The purpose of consent application B06-2022 is to sever a 0.76 acre portion of the vacant parcel to the east of 356 Whites Road with no civic address and add it to the severed portion of the property from 356 Whites Road created through consent application B05-2022. This application will result in the vacant retained parcel with no civic address, having a total lot area of approximately 18.38 acres with 45 meters of frontage on Whites Road. The consent applications B05-2022, the lot line adjustment, and B06-2022, the new lot, will result in creating one new vacant rural residential lot having a total lot area of approximately 1.05 acres with 45 meters of frontage on Whites Road. The purpose of the zoning bylaw amendment application, file number Z04-2022, serves to rezone the severed lands of B05-2022 and B06-2022 from rural exception number 10 zone to rural residential zone in order to address the reduced lot size and associated permitted uses. The zoning bylaw amendment application, file number Z04-2022, also serves to rezone the retained lands from B06-2022 from rural exception number 10 zone to a rural exception number 10 revised zone and environmental protection zone in order to recognize the revised lot frontage, lot area, and natural heritage features on the property. The consent and rezoning applications were deferred prior to the July 20th Planning Council meeting due to outstanding concerns from Lower Trent Conservation. An updated environmental impact study has been submitted from Cambium that satisfies the original concerns from Lower Trent Conservation and the municipality of Brighton.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed consent and/or zoning bylaw amendment?
Good evening, worship and members of the committee. I'm Spencer Hutchison, a registered planner, and I help the applicants with the application. I thank my colleague to the left, Samantha Deck, for the presentation. Well done, and concur with the recommendations and reports with regards to the consent, development agreement, and the rezoning. And I can answer any questions, but I think your staff have given you a voluminous, a big report.
It is in fact big, yes.
Yeah, and a big agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. If there are any questions that we can direct to you, I'm grateful that you're here for those. Is there anyone else present who has any questions or comments on the consents or zoning bylaw amendment? Madam Clerk, are you aware of anyone joining us through electronic means for that purpose? Are there any questions or comments regarding the consent and zoning bylaw amendment for members of council? There are none noted. Mrs. Deck, do you have any final comments?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Does council wish to make a decision at this time on the consent and zoning bylaw amendments? I am going to read the whole thing, yes. Mr. Walsh and I already had this discussion. He offered to condense it, but I said, no, for the purposes of the record, we will read the whole thing and maybe talk later about how we change how we do things. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor Blanc. The council receives this staff report dated August 24th, 2022 regarding consent application B05, 2022 and B06, 2022 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z04, 2022 as prepared by staff of the Planning and Development Department. And further, that council enacts a bylaw to rezone the severed lands of B05, 2022 and B06, 2022 located in part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33 concession 1 closed by CL 39807 and part of lot 32 concession 1 being part 1 on registered plan 39R 10408 and part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33 concession 1 closed by CL 39807 and part of lot 32 concession 1 being part 1 on registered plan 38R 5364, except part 1 of registered plan 39R 10408 from the rural exception number 10 zone to rural residential zone and to rezone the retained lands from B06 2022 from the rural exception number 10 zone to the revised rural exception number 10 zone and environmental protection zone. And further, that council direct the mayor and the clerk to execute the development agreement provided in attachment 4. And further, that council enact a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the development agreement. And further, that council authorize the municipal solicitor through an acknowledgement and direction agreement to register the enacted bylaw for the development agreement, including making any necessary revisions to legal descriptions, names, or undertakings as may be necessary. And further, that council grant provisional consent to application B05, 2022 and B06, 2022, subject to the following conditions. Each condition shall be fulfilled no later than 2 years from the date of the mailing of the decision. That the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z04, 2022 is finally approved. At the applicant's cost, sufficient land be conveyed by registered transfer to the municipality of Brighton along the frontage of Whites Road for widening of the road allowance to a minimum of 10 meters for the respective center lines, inclusive of any associated travel areas, shoulders, or drainage works to the satisfaction of the manager of operations. The conveyance referenced in condition 3C above shall be clear of any liens or encumbrances, all to the satisfaction of the manager of operations. That an application for an entrance permit for the severed lots are submitted and approved by the municipality. That a tree preservation and replanting plan be completed to the satisfaction of the municipality of Brighton and the Lower Trent Conservation. That the applicant enters into a development agreement to implement the summary and recommendations from the environmental impact study and the tree preservation and replanting plan. For B05, 2022, confirmation from the applicant's solicitor that the severed and benefiting lands will merge on title. For B05, 2022, the OLS indicate in writing to the Department of Planning and Development that no encroachments such as driveways, parking areas, fences, wells, or septics will result from the lot addition conveyances. For B05, 2022, the solicitor for the applicant shall submit an undertaking to the municipality to the following effect. I hereby personally undertake to prepare and register an application to consolidate parcels for those lands being the severed lands herein and those lands being the benefiting lands herein, and provide to the municipality the registered application to consolidate parcels as soon as possible after the registration of the severance transfer and designation of the new PIN to the severed lands. For B05, 2022, the subsections 3 and 5 of Section 50 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, shall apply to any subsequent conveyances of or transactions involving the conveyed lands. All taxes on each of the lots be paid up to date prior to the issuance of a certificate of official. A digital copy of a registrable survey for the lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk. The surveyor deposit with the municipality a geospatial data file of the severed parcel fabric with respect to the severed and retained lands submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. The owner provides to the municipality a registrable description on a deed conveying the severed lands for use for the issuance of a certificate of official for consent, and consent file B05, 2022 shall be completed and the transfer endorsed with the municipal official concurrently with that of the consent file number B06, Is there any discussion? I'll bet you are. You're just lucky I didn't fall asleep. I've got one, thank you. All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. It does seem pretty well put together, doesn't it? That brings us to our second item in our statutory public meeting, being the Community Improvement Plan, Official Plan Amendment, OPA 01-2022. This is a Brighton-initiated official plan amendment, and the purpose is to seek public input on the Community Improvement Plan program and the official plan amendment. Mr. Walsh, by what method and on what date was notice of the official plan amendment applications given?
Mayor to Council, notice of the proposed official plan amendment was given through advertisement in the Brighton Independent newspaper on July 28th, 2022, consistent with notice requirements under the Planning Act.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed official plan amendment?
Section 28 of the Planning Act and Section 365.1 of the Municipal Law permits planning authorities to introduce development incentives for projects that advance public benefits through a program referred to as Community Improvement Plans, or CIP. If adopted by council through an official plan to the municipal official plan, a CIP program involves establishing a policy framework, directing projects and lands that may qualify for being offered incentives. Once policies are established, landowners may apply to receive grants, loans, tax deferrals, or waiving of development charges and application fees towards specific projects in keeping with council's budget. The CIP policies may also authorize council to acquire lands needed to achieve objectives of community improvement, such as brownfield redevelopment or affordable housing. And specific CIP project is approved by council through a corresponding bylaw. So no project commences without a corresponding subsequent bylaw, and no budgetary expenditure is made until passing of such bylaw. This staff report introduces draft community improvement policies that allow the municipal council and the province and the county the giving of incentives towards the redevelopment plans that will contribute to community benefits in two particular areas. Once that specific area is brownfield lands, the term brownfield refers to properties that have a history of industrial or commercial uses that have ceased, without leaving the property challenged to potential redevelopment due to suspected or identified contaminants. A second draft of CIP policies is also introduced, referred to as community development. It addresses incentives for affordable housing, rural economic diversification, and downtown revitalization.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed official plan amendment? Madam Clerk, are you aware of anyone joining us on Zoom for that purpose? Do members of council have any questions or comments on the proposed official plan amendment? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank staff for finally getting a project like this off the ground. It's been a long time coming. So it's a good start, and look forward to seeing what comes further. Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to not be remiss in not identifying that Mr. Brent Barnes was the author of much of the CIP policy that we have in front of us. And Brent Barnes is sitting behind me here, and Brent has a long history of providing very good planning advice as a consultant for many years. So we're very lucky to have him here.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh, and Mr. Barnes. Thank you for your service to the municipality. We do appreciate what you've brought before us today. Any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Walsh, do you have any final comments?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. The staff report recommends receiving public comments and bringing the official plan amendment to the following council meeting when a decision of council is anticipated. No decision is before council during this session. So the motion before me is moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the staff report dated August 24th, 2022 regarding official plan amendment number OPA 01-2022 Community Improvement Plan Policies, and that council receive applicable oral comments from the public through the statutory public meeting and direct staff to give due consideration to such comments. We'll note that none were made. and that council direct staff to present a bylaw for adoption of the official plan amendment at its next session that will amend the community improvement plan policies of the official plan of the municipality of Brighton and introduce a program supportive of brownfield development and community development, i.e. and specifically for affordable housing, rural economic diversification, and downtown revitalization. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion is carried. Brings us to our third and final item in the statutory public meeting, being the declaration of sale and surplus land. Petition is RC 01-2022. The applicant is Carolyn Sheenan and Eric Farndon. With regard to a road closure application, as I mentioned, it's RC 01-2022 Stony Point Road South. Purpose of the public meeting is to receive public comment on the proposed road closure application. Mrs. Deck, by what method and on what date was notice of the road closure application given?
Notice of the road closure application was sent by first class mail on August 2nd, 2022 to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject property. Notice was also circulated to all agencies, including the Department of Fisheries and Trent Severn Waterway / Parks Canada. Public notice was provided in the Brighton Independent on August 4th, 2022. In addition, a sign notice was also posted on the property.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. And would you please explain the purpose and reason for the proposed road closure application?
An application for the closure of a road allowance has been submitted by Carolyn Sheehan and Eric Farndon. The subject lands are located off of Stony Point Road South, east of Windy Lane, and are described as part of lots 35 and 36, being part 13, 14, and 15 on registered plan 38R2561. The road allowance is approximately 69 feet or 21 meters in width and extends from Stony Point Road South northernly to Presqu'île Bay and the Murray Canal. Based on the information provided to the municipality, the applicants would like to add additional property to their existing lots on both sides of the road allowance. Staff have completed a site inspection of the road allowance and no encroachments were observed. An assessment of underground infrastructure, i.e. locates, has not been completed as no construction activities are immediately proposed. Lower Trent Conservation was circulated on the application and outlined that the subject lands are entirely regulated by Lower Trent Conservation due to the presence of the Presqu'île Bay Marsh, provincially significant wetland or PSW, an unevaluated coastal wetland, and multiple tributaries of Lake Ontario, as well as the delineated flooding hazard of Lake Ontario. Planning staff support the retention of road allowances in order to provide opportunities for current and future public access. However, the subject road allowance leading to Presqu'île Bay and the Murray Canal is not desirable or practical to be opened due to the presence of wetlands and flood hazards associated with Lake Ontario. The Department of Fisheries was also circulated on the application and have no objections to the closure of the road allowance. Public comments have been received from persons who reside or own land near the road allowance due to the environmental features on the property. Staff would like to outline that there is no development proposed as part of this road closure application, and there are no changes to the environmental protection designation and zoning. Any and all Development or Planning Act applications that would be received would be subject to a review of all natural heritage features and associated wildlife. Staff would just like to mention that we're not requesting a decision, we're just receiving public comments this evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Deck. Are there persons present who have questions or comments regarding the proposed closure and conveyance of the road allowance? Come on up. There's a little purple button in front of you. If you push that. There you
Good
go.
evening, your worship and councillors and staff. My name is Richard Wright. I'm a resident with my wife Lori, who is here on video at 154 Windy Lane. We live within 120 meters of the area in question. My concern, which I've brought to the attention of council, and I believe you've been circulated information, has to do with a very wonderful discovery on the land that is part of the road allowance and also all around Windy Lane on the more easterly side and northerly side, so closer to the road allowance itself. And that discovery is the discovery of a very significant monarch concentration that uses this area for whatever reason as some kind of migratory staging area, if you wish. I'm not an expert. I'm not a zoologist. I'm not here for that reason. I happen to be a lawyer. I've been practicing for 36 years, but I'm not here in any capacity or representing anybody. I'm representing myself and my wife, and just out of an abundance of concern as a person who sees a species that is already been indicated as under risk. It's a species at risk. That's the step before it becomes endangered. You may be aware of that. And the monarch population, there's all kinds of studies and so on, and I'll leave that to your own perusal, but it's under significant pressure. Some have said that the decline in the population is tenfold in the last 10 years, and in 20 years may be gone altogether. And the eastern monarch may disappear. That's some studies. Again, there's others, but I'm not here to testify to that fact. I'm here to present information and of a concern that says, essentially, pause, take a minute. I'd like to just show I've only picked 4 videos you've received. I hope a Google shared drive link to 2 different. I apologize that it's in 2 chunks, but I have a request is simply to show 4 of them, and that would be it, and then move on to make a couple other short points, and then I'll be finished. Is it possible to, I'm not sure.
Madam Clerk,
Candace, are
we
you-
have those? Okay.
Thank you. The first one I would like to show is it's number 7701. I'm sorry, 7702. I apologize, 7702. This is my video. All of the videos you see on the shared drive links, might take a second, are taken by myself on September the 7th, 2019. I'm going to say 5 o'clock-ish in the afternoon, approximately maybe 5:30. I can tell by the sun, and plus I had to get home from work and get out to the cottage, so or out to the property. So it's approximately that time. They're short little clips. You may hear grandchildren. That's because it's a wonderful sight. It's magnificent to see the concentration of monarchs that were actually present. It's somewhat breathtaking. If that can be played, you'll see me taking my iPhone and just panning across around. And I am at the elbow of Windy Lane, where Windy Lane goes in a northerly direction and then elbows down in a westerly direction towards the bay. So at that far extreme elbow, and I'm looking into the road allowance. I don't know if it can be centered. That's the edge, and you'll see the taller trees in the background is essentially where the road allowance would be. And you'll see some of the monarchs, and I pan back a bit and keep on going. I don't know if the front part of that video can be shown because it really gives you a better look at, yeah, that's looking straight in directly in an easterly direction. You can see them parking on the goldenrod. There's so many at some points, the goldenrod actually dips down because of their weight of the monarchs. And they're just everywhere. They're on branches, they're on trees. As the evening progresses, they get up into the higher branches of the trees. And there's one video I will show you to demonstrate that. It's not hundreds, it's thousands. And Windy Lane is approximately 250 meters. I would say the area in question with the goldenrod and all the flora would be probably 150 meters by 30 to 50 meters deep. So it's quite a significant area. Number 2 would be 7703. That's possible. Again, this is looking straight into the road allowance from the very tip corner. I'm standing on the easterly side of Windy Lane. Unfortunately, some part of that today got mowed down because of some kind of survey work that's going on or investigation, but that's only about a 20-foot wide swath. But that is, again, the picture. And then the third one I'd like to show is, you'll see the demonstration on the branches, 7738. I never understood, and again, I'm not an expert, I'm curious why the monarchs accumulate on branches, but then I think I realized it because they look like leaves. They look like fall leaves. And I think it's camouflage. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert. and you'll see them nestling. These are the trees now that you see that are in the road allowance. That's just off one branch. And then the last one is 7727. And I think it's a close-up of the branch, and you have to wait till the end to see them all flutter their wings because they are really good camouflage. 7727. Oh, that's, you might see the movement. It's a bit. I think a buddy joins them and then they all wake up and you can see them all over the place. And that's later on in the evening because I understand they go up into the tree branches to wait out the night and so on. It is a spectacular sight. I witnessed the takeoff. I've never understood how it worked. They go straight up 200 plus feet. And they really are hitting I watched them migrate and they go straight up like an elevator. And then what happens is they catch a little breeze heading south and they don't flap their wings. They fly like kites. That's how they do it. I never understood it, but a tiny animal that makes it all the way to Mexico, which is really something. So the and even though I'm a practitioner, I'm a neophyte at this type of thing. It's not my area of law. So I'm just a neighbor here. Don't want to cause trouble. I believe in reasonable, responsible development. I'm an advocate of that. I'm here because of this species, and that's it. I like to consider our neighbors our friends, but it is what it is. I reached out looking for guidance. I spoke to Lower Trent, was given a significant amount of information. Was also reached out to the province, to the Ministry of Environment, who happens to be the MPP sitting in this riding. And was through that ministry was directed to a Mr. John Crowder, who is a senior environmental officer, who then referred the matter with the videos and so on to the species at risk team of the Ministry of Environment. That's a specialized team that investigates species that are at risk and habitat, and if there is a risk to them and so on. They have now, and I have circulated today a copy of an email from Mr. Crowder from yesterday, in which he said, I just received notice from the species at risk branch about 1 hour ago, indicating that they are reviewing the materials provided. I don't have a time frame, but suspect they are doing their best to get something together in a timely fashion. I'll let you know. Well, I haven't heard anything yet, but they have been contacted. They are engaging. They're at the very preliminary stage of investigating this migratory habitat, because it appears to be, when they're in the thousands and they're endangered, it appears to be significant. Also, Ms. Anastasio from the Lower Trent, when I asked her a direct question, and I had a very good conversation with her, and she's an extremely knowledgeable lady, I should say, that the Lower Trent's primary area is not species at risk. If they're doing an assessment, they come across one, they will report it, but their go-to is the species at risk team. That's where they would go. They don't handle it themselves. They're not responsible for it. And lot additions are not considered development. So they only do a sort of a surface look at the regulatory framework. They don't express any opinions about things at risk. They do express what the wetland is and the limitations and so on. But no, she was very clear that, and that's why I wanted to produce that email for you to see, where she says, we do not comment on species at risk, SAR, frequently during the planning review process. However, SAR concerns are actually under the MECP jurisdiction, and this process is proponent led. You have contacted the appropriate body. In other words, by contacting and reaching out to that ministry, so they're deferring to that. This information as well, and I apologize. I know Madam Clerk has sent out the best notice she could. We never received a registered mail. We never received a letter. We saw the sign on the wall. And there are multiple emails to council or to the clerk's office asking for copies of and I did receive it a week ago, Monday, the application. I did not know about Mr. Ferndon's part. I only saw Ms. Sheehan's application. I don't know when that happened. That's fine. That's not what I'm here to ask about. I'm here to ask you to consider pausing this thing before you convey land away. That's 5 acres of wetland and potentially significant environmental habitat. Just pause. Let the experts come in. I don't believe, unless you are experts on the council, I'm not. And when you are presented with something that is this significant, it's a treasure, really. It's a natural treasure and a dwindling one in your backyard, in your riding, in your area. And so my submission is just pause, let the experts come in, do whatever they have to do to study this, bring this matter back before council if you need to, but just take a moment to become informed about what's really happening here. Because of the shortness of this, that's really the extent of my submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. So
Thank you.
just two comments. First, I'd ask you to please complete
Yes.
the information, the contact information sheet beside you. And I will remind you and everyone else that tonight we're here to receive information. We're here to receive your comments and questions. Those comments and questions will be reviewed by staff, and I would anticipate that staff would want to reach out to the species at risk team at the MECP, given your comments tonight, given your submission to the MECP. And I'm getting head nods from all three members of the planning department. So I can assure you that is exactly what will happen in advance of a final report coming to council at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other persons present who have questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors. My name's Michael Skibitsky. I also live on Windy Lane 148. Actually, a quick background. I just retired from Air Canada after 34 years. I now volunteer as the Veterans Affairs Officer at Branch 100 here in Legion, which is keeping me busy, and it's I like it. In any case, as I mentioned, I live on Windy Lane in Carrying Place. It lies adjacent to the above proposed closure and conveyance. I'm quite concerned with the potential damage that inevitable development will cause with this area's fauna. The section, if this section of nature is sold to a private party, now the new evidence, has come to light. And of course, I can only echo what Mr. Wright has said about butterflies in particular. Currently, there are many species living on this piece of land, including swans, turtles, frogs, deer, wild turkeys, huge variety of birds. I've personally seen a white snowy owl and a bald eagle as well. In fact, our laneway attracts bird watchers because of the rare types of birds as these. More importantly, as I mentioned, the monarch butterfly has a migratory habitat here, butterfly that is at risk being endangered. I've reached out to many departments of government, one to Lower Trent, and I did receive a map from Lower Trent of the area in question, and it basically subdivided what was marsh, what was not marsh, basically what was protected, I guess, EP. So what I did at these to prove or to show that these lines that were drawn on a map were basically obsolete. In that, I just took a quote from the Lower Trent Conversation Ontario Regulation Policy Document 16306, and I'll just paraphrase. It's just a couple of sentences. It says, it is not necessary to map a feature before it can be regulated. The legal basis for defining regulated areas remains with the written text. While the Lower Trent Conservation Regulation refers to maps which approximate regulation limits and may be subject to revision, the text of the regulation prevails. The guidelines for developing schedules of regulated areas identify requirements for the preparation of maps and or revisions to existing maps. Detailed studies requested at the time of an application may further refine or delineate the regulated features. Example, hazardous lands, or in this case, species that are at risk or possibly going to be endangered, and that's what I'm looking at. Again, just to echo what Mr. Wright said, these lines, the fauna of the animals, the butterflies, they don't read maps. They don't know where these lines are. As far as I'm concerned, perhaps somebody with the expertise should look in it and see whether the EP should be the whole piece of land and not just some line where people can build. And on the other, the other half of the land, the animals can live. That just doesn't make sense as far as I'm concerned. In any case, yeah. Can we take a pause? Can the Ministry of Environment, Conservation, Parks, their species at risk, as was mentioned before, they're the ones that should take a look at this and decide is should something be done. Again, I'm just the I'm just a neighbor. I'm very curious as to what's going on here. These endangered species or the species at risk is close to my heart. You know, I look at birds. I've got 4 pairs of binoculars, a telescope, and a scope on my pellet rifle rather. But it's very, very important and close to my heart. So please take a hard look at this if you could. Thank you very much. I have nothing further.
Thank you very much. Could you spell your last name for me?
Certainly can. It's not the way it's pronounced. SKU, B as in Bravo, ICKY.
And it's Skavisky?
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're filling out the form already. Thank
I
you
am
very
indeed.
much. You heard my comments to Mr. Wright, I assume,
I did.
that tonight we're just hearing comments
I
that,
do.
and we've already received acknowledgement through triple head nods that our staff will be in touch with the species at risk group through the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks before proceeding with a final report to council.
Excellent. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Are any other questions or comments from members of the public? Madam Clerk, are you aware of anyone joining us by Zoom? I know Mrs. Wright is joining us by Zoom. I assume that's just to monitor Mr. Wright, make sure he doesn't go offside too much. I know, sir, I understand. All right. So as I have said, tonight we are simply receiving comments. Sorry, Mrs. Deck, do you have any final comments?
No, I do not.
Thank you. So tonight we are just receiving comments. We will not be making a decision this evening. The motion before me reads and is moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that council receives the staff report dated August 24th, 2022 regarding application file number RC 01-2022 for the declaration of surplus and sale of lands. And further, that after receiving public comments, a staff report be presented to council for consideration at a subsequent council meeting. So no decision this evening, just receiving and offering direction to staff to proceed to a report. Any questions or comments on the motion? Councillor Tadman.
Just a comment. I live across from where you're talking about the butterflies. I've never seen them come across. I'm at Gosport. Have someone from Presqu'île that does the tagging of the monarchs before they fly south been in contact with that area?
Councillor Tadman, could you draw your microphone
Oh,
closer
sorry.
to you? Yeah.
Because I think they'd be totally interested in, and maybe they do know about it, but I've never ever, they don't come across where I am right at the water, I know, in that kind of numbers ever. So it must be a real path that they go across there. And I'm sure Presqu'île, the Presqu'île people that do all these studies on the monarchs would be interested to see that. So maybe they could get in contact with the parks.
I can try to connect you with one of the park staff. I'm not sure they do anything outside the park, but maybe they do. And if not, they could probably put you in touch with M&R people who would be have that interest too. So, Mr. Wright, I have your email, and I will endeavor to connect you with someone at Presqu'île. No.
Okay.
Heading to Mexico. Yeah. Go
And
ahead,
just to
Councillor Tadman.
further to that, I think you've got the best group of monarchs, because I don't think any number like that would go across at Presqu'île, because I've been over there enough and I've never seen it either. They usually migrate in September, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Tadman. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Anderson?
Well, I'm glad we're making a pause on this. Anyhow, it makes a lot of sense. Both your presentations were excellent and hit home with me. I agree with what you're talking about. I am concerned about the wetland too, and I have questions about that, but that'll be at another time. I know that, right?
Yeah, we will have opportunity to ask those questions when the final report comes to council. Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you very much, Your Worship. In your research for pollination, do the monarch butterflies pollinate like tomatoes or other plants because I could use them in my garden. I have a lot of flowers and very few tomatoes because we're losing our insects a lot. I think we got to protect them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? All in favor of the motion? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Thank you. And we'll conclude our statutory public meeting with a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council move out of the statutory public meeting, August 24th, 2022 at 7:16 p.m. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to staff planning and development reports. Our first report is with regard to Applewood Meadows phases 3 and 4. Mr. Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Your worship, to council, we've had a very thorough review of this draft plan subdivision, and to do so with our current staff complement before Mr. Warner was able to finally land with us. We brought in IBI Consulting Group to assist us in terms of the needed resources for the adequate review of this large development proposal. So I think Angela of IBI has a brief PowerPoint just to do a bit of an overview, and then I might add some infill details with that. And subsequently, the applicant's consultant will be online to do a presentation and ask or to respond to any specific questions council may have.
Thank you. So the presenters with IBI,
Correct?
and Angela is your first name. What's your last name, Angela?
It's BUONAMICI.
BUONAMICI.
Yes.
Buonamici?
Bonamici.
Buonamici?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to ruin that over and over again tonight. I apologize. Buonamici.
okay.
Okay.
That's why I didn't say it.
Okay, Ms. Buonamici, thank you very much for joining us. So IBI has been contracted by the municipality to offer services to the municipality in this regard. So I'll turn the floor over to you.
As Mr. Walsh indicated, IBI was retained by the town to do a technical review of the application for Applewood Meadows Phase 3 and 4. If we could do the next slide, that's okay. Okay, so these are the subject lands. Phase 3 is the square-like shape that is south of Cortland Way and would be an extension of Royal Gala Drive. And then phase 4 is the larger parcel, which is south of Main Street and west of Frundle Lane. Together, they make up 12.72 hectares in the area. And next slide, please. So this is the draft plan that has been received. What they are proposing is 26 single detached housing, 4 semi-detached houses, 115 standard townhouse units, 198 stacked back-to-back townhouse units, and 215 mixed-use units, which would comprise of commercial on the first floor and then residential above that. In addition to that, there is 2 open space blocks, one being a parkette and the other being the swim pond, which is located just south of Street C, which in the drawing is the most easterly block at the bottom. And there is an EP zone just in the southwest corner of the property, which is to provide a buffer to the wetland, which is on the adjacent property. With this, there will be the extension of the existing roads of Brayburn Street, Cortland Way, and Royal Gala Drive, which will all extend to the westerly property limit. And there are an addition of 4 new streets, which are currently labeled as Street A, B, and C, and D. Next slide, please. All right. So before you tonight is 3 applications. The first being the proposed draft plan of subdivision, which I described all the number of units and residential units that are being provided, which will provide a total of 558 dwelling units. The official plan amendment is to redesignate the property from greenfield and environmental protection to residential, and the area in the southwest corner to be environmental protection as well. We would have to update schedules B, C, and H to match the proposed development. And we are requesting special policies to ensure certain elements of the subdivision are implemented. And then the zoning bylaw amendment is to change the zoning, which is currently all agricultural A1 zone, to urban residential 2, exception 49 or 45, which will be for the singles and semis. Urban residential 4, exception 2, which will be for all these standard townhouses. Urban residential 4, exception 4, which will be for the stacked back-to-back townhouses. Local commercial exception number 3 will be for the mixed-use commercial and residential units. The open space zones will go to the swim pond and the parkette. And the environmental protection zone will be for the 30-meter wetland buffer in the southwest corner. Next slide, please. So with this, the 3 applications, we examine them against the policy framework that is in place. With regards to the provincial policy statement, this development creates a healthy, livable, and safe community. It offers a mix of housing and commercial uses, as well as recreational open space uses. It is the extension of the development to the east, which is Applewood Meadows Phase 2. And it is providing 5% of parkland and protecting the natural features that are adjacent to the property. So we feel that it is consistent with the policies of the PPS. For the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, this development supports a complete community within the urban area and designated greenfield site. There's protection of the natural heritage system, and so there we felt it conforms to the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. In the County of Northumberland official plan, the property is designated urban area. With that, full services are available for the site. The development provides housing for all types of families, ages, incomes, and so therefore it conforms to the county's official plan. With the municipality's official plan, we are seeking an amendment due to what it is designated right now. It's designated greenfield, which is a candidate for development. And so by designating it into a residential designation, it is the better suited and will comply or conform to the official plan. In looking at the municipality's official plan policies regarding land use, development patterns, natural heritage, and housing, this development does comply with all those policies. So when the amendment is approved, it will be conforming to the official plan, and as well as the zoning bylaw amendment. Implementing the zoning bylaw amendment application will bring it in conformity with the zoning bylaw, as currently the entire subject property is zoned agricultural A1. Next slide, please. Oh. No. So I had an additional slide. Okay, but anyhow, it was just to show phasing, which I can describe. Nope, just, yeah. So because it is a large development, this won't be built out all in one shot. Obviously, there will be 4 subsequent phases. The first would be phase 3, which would be the singles and townhouses that are Royal Gala Drive and Street D. And I believe 1 block of townhouses, which are directly adjacent from the townhouses across Rundle Lane. So just that block would be developed. And then the fourth phase, phase 4A, would be the singles on above Royal Gala Drive and everything to the south of Royal Gala Drive. So that would be stacked townhouses in those 3 blocks, the swim pond, and the environmental protection would be dedicated to the municipality. And then working its way up, 4B would be the, I believe, the stacked townhouses from Brayburn all the way to the singles along Royal Gala. And then the final stage would be 4C, which are the 2 blocks, the one along Main Street and the one to the south of that block. So that is my concise presentation, and I can answer any questions or comments that council may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Angela, through the mayor. I believe we're going to pop up those diagrams that Angela was referring to. I just shot them over now. Just to make a note on page 263 of the 243 at the top of the page of the report, there's some numbering format issues. So the recommendations refer to numbers, items 1 and 2, but they are not formatted correctly, that they are actually numbers 4 and 5 respectively. So here we see the phasing plan that was referred to. And so we see phase 3 as presented, and that's proposed to be done all in one whole. And then there'll be phasing from the south going to the north. So the north section would be the last one to come on stream. So that's important from a number of respects. So I just want to point out some specific conditions that have been recommended for approval. One of the specific conditions is that residual sanitary sewer and water capacity would not be allocated until the time of execution of the subdivision agreement. So each phase comes on stream or being proposed for a subdivision agreement, only at that time is there any allocation of residual sanitary capacity. So you'll find that in the conditions, and that would be form provisions within the agreement as well. There's no guarantee of capacity. It's until the time that subdivision agreement is actually executed. There was some question about phase 3 in relation to the finishing up of phase 2. So phase 3 is not to be registered until such time that the phase 2 sidewalks are completed. So the asphalt will be done. There's a single lift on that now, and the asphalt will be done in a fairly timely fashion about the same time, but the condition focused on the sidewalks, that will have to be done before registration of phase 3. There is a recommendation that a bus stop and lay-by associated with it be designed along Main Street in that last phase, that phase 4C. There's the need for a pedestrian plan to the satisfaction of the school boards. So they're interested in seeing how the children getting them on the school bus will find their way onto perhaps Wendell Lane or whatever else the bus stops might be planned out, but that's something that the developer will have to work out with the school board. That was a recommended condition by the school board responding to the circulations. In terms of additional dwelling units or second units, there's the provision that was also found in the Brighton Meadows subdivision that a minimum 10% of the singles and semis are to have the additional dwelling units subject to market response. So if for whatever reason there isn't a strong market response, the developer can present evidence as such and we can reconsider it. So it's a very, very strong encouragement is essentially the effect of the conditions. But it is the same wording as the Brighton Meadows subdivision, as council members may recall. So that will be a nice contribution to affordable housing. I'd make note also that the townhouse units historically are always recognized as making a contribution to a more affordable housing stock. I know in today's housing market that doesn't always seem like that, but they are going to be more affordable than a single detached. So in essence, you see that the staff have recommended draft approval of the subdivision, passing of the zoning bylaw amendment, and the amendment of the official plan being adopted here for consideration of final approval by the County of Northumberland.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Ms. Bonamici. Appreciate. Jennifer, that's not the norm. We're not in a statutory public meeting at this stage. I understand, but she had opportunity to speak at the statutory public meeting, and now it's council's turn to make a decision. So we've heard from staff. I'm going to read the motion. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect, that the report of the Planning and Development Department dated August 24th, 2022 regarding subdivision file number sub 2021-02 official plan amendment number OPA 02-2021 and rezoning bylaw amendment Z13 2021 be received. The council proceed to adopt official plan amendment number 9, which will redesignate a portion of the subject lands described as block 67 plan 39M 924 and part of lot 5 concession 1 registered plan 28 in the municipality of Brighton from greenfield designation to the residential open space and environmental protection designations. That council enacts a bylaw to adopt official plan amendment number 9 to the municipality of Brighton official plan, and that staff be directed to prepare and submit the completed planning record to the residential 2 zone, special urban residential 4 zone, special urban residential 4 zone, special local commercial zone, open space zone, and environmental protection zone. That draft plan of subdivision file number sub 2021-02 for the land.
Significant work to be done in phase 2. So does the developer have a timeline for that?
Director Walsh.
Yes, we made inquiries with the developer as to those timelines and that information shared to date. Things are dynamic in nature in terms of suppliers for construction equipment and materials, of course, but the timelines are December, late November and December for the last components. And if the mayor wishes, the applicants are here, and the project managers are here to answer any related questions that if you wanted to call upon them.
Councilor
That's the
Rowley,
timeline that I was given.
would you like to hear from the?
Yeah, I would like to, yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions, but I'll start with this, but I would like to hear kind of some hard and fast answers on that. Thank you.
You just click the lavender button in front of you and introduce yourself, please.
Good evening. My name is Cody Orm with Monument, project manager for this development application. So your worship, members of council, staff, thank you for the question. So yes, we are proceeding as per the subdivision agreement to build out phase 2. We are looking to schedule works to get in at their earliest availability for the roadways that can be constructed this year. Again, it's dynamic in its nature, trying to get them in with all the other construction activity that goes on. We try to do everything at once, get them in once to do it and get out. So again, there's lots of scheduling that goes into it. We're aiming for later construction this year. It may be spring of next year, but that's what we're on right now.
Thank you. Any further questions from members of council? Councilor Rowley, you have another one?
Yeah, I have a couple. Do you want to go?
Oh yeah, we'll go around the
Yeah.
horseshoe. Councilor LeBlanc.
Yes, through your worship. Our CI, our developer, or our consultants mentioned something about a swimming pond.
Yeah, that confused me too. And then I realized it's SWIM, SWM, Stormwater Management Pond. I was imagining children swimming in this pond. I'm like, that ain't right. And then it hit me what it was.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
I'll finish with my second question. In doing a little bit of history research on the site, I kind of found out why it was zoned greenfield and environmental protection, because there's been a number of floods that took place there, up to 8 feet of water. Secondly, I also found in the investigation, there used to be the Grand Trunk Railroad that used to go through there. And basically the hump of it is all still there. And knowing what's in an old railroad with mercury, barium and other contaminants, I was wondering if there was proper testing that was done. That's all the silt and everything that's been moved around and put on different properties. If you have a phase 2 report on that.
Mr. Walsh?
Through the mayor to the council, there is a condition of an updated ESA to be inclusive of the sea and lands that were added to the parcel as well.
What about the existing homes that have already been built?
Well, that spur land is primarily, I think, Royal Gallo Street right now, so it's been encapsulated. So it, my most recent experience dealing with contaminated sites was that, at least in Prince Edward County, is we put it underneath the street, and that was an acceptable approach.
So
Hang on. Are there anyone else on council who has questions before I entertain just Council Rowley and Councilor LeBlanc? Councilor Bateman.
I had one around the second dwelling numbers. You mentioned 10% of the total units. Is that the minimum standard that we get in developments? I recall, I think it was in the last year, one of the developments that came forward, we were requesting, I believe, 15% or more. So is this the minimum that we go for? And is there a possibility of having more second dwellings?
Director Walsh.
Good question. The condition of the 10% is the same as Brighton Meadows. So I think the Brighton Meadows, because of the composition of housing, it represented more additional dwelling units or more second units just because it had a lot more singles and semis. But same rate or same percentage was used.
Thank you. Councilor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. The parcel of this land, does this butt up immediately to the farm to the west? And is there considerations and data regarding the minimum distance setbacks? I'm pretty sure that the farm next door is not planning to quit farming anytime soon. I was wondering if there's considerations, because I believe Mr. Cheer still sprays for, vegetation or certain plantings that he's done. I'm wondering how close that will that be, and will that affect maybe residents moving there, that Mr. Cheer will have to deal with those negativities? I hope that wouldn't happen.
I think MDS is barn related, but Mr. Walsh.
Through the mayor to council, yeah, good question. I was remiss mentioning some of the special conditions. There is a condition of an agricultural impact assessment as part of the draft approval conditions. So that would have to look at how they would mitigate any incompatibilities that regards. So presumably it would come back with things like being able to have windows that can be closed and venting that would be directed to the least side of the homes and things like that. So the air exchanges would be very minimal. Mr. Cheer's farm is located in the urban designation so it is. He's allowed to continue farming, of course. His farming practices would be governed by the Normal Farming Practices Act, which he's undertaking. So there's no concern there. But just to make mention, the draft conditions did acknowledge that issue. He did mention that in the open house, and we've tracked that issue, and it's found its way through as a condition.
And Mr. Cheer would be satisfied with that. Like I said, he doesn't need to discontinue any of his farming operation. However, over the years, we've heard as well, people moving to these wonderful farming communities who then, once new residents are in, start complain about smells or air quality or whatever. So I just hope that Mr. Cheer will be ensured that that won't happen, that won't affect him.
I think just in response, Mayor, if I may, that the draft conditions involve a number of warning clauses, and I think that maybe a part of the result of the agricultural impact assessment will conclude that there'll be warning clauses, any registered agreements, and that all prospective purchasers be notified of those clauses.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. That's a good idea. I just wonder also whether there's ability to have like a tree line in between, because that would stop, trees are amazing at, stopping smells or whatever it may be, activity going back and forth. So my main question is, when we read through, there's lots of, there's some outstanding items, there's lots of conditions, and then that sparks a lot of questions from council. And so I guess my question for you and your department is, you're the expert. Are you satisfied and confident with all the outstanding items that this is the right time to move forward with this application?
Yes, staff are confident that there's been a thorough review and that it's time to recommend draft approval for it. Yeah, there is a lot of follow-up. Stepping from the planning stage, we'll drill down into the detailed design stage after this. But so there is a lot more detailed work to be done, but at the planning stage, we feel there's been a thorough review.
Thank you, Councillor LeBlanc.
I have a few more questions. One I have is, you mentioned on the water and stormwater and well, I won't go through storm, I'll say with the sanitary sewer. With this allotment, it doesn't leave us very much room left. And we got other developments coming that are on the books. If this one takes all the available limit to the wastewater treatment plant, what's going to happen with all the other developers that are coming on stream? Because you're saying that you're going to hold it for them as they get ready and they do it in phases. So what's going to happen with the other ones that are coming on stream now that don't have the available capacity? Because it's going to all go to one developer.
Director?
To the mayor, to council, when I made reference to the special conditions about only allocated at the time of subdivision agreement execution, there's also a clause in the draft approval saying that there's no guarantee that it's going to be available. So it's not an allocation to them. It's saying it's not allocated until such time that we're ready to do the subdivision agreement.
At which point we'll check our allocation and be able to advise this developer
Correct.
if they can continue with their staged phasing.
That's correct. And we have our EA being undertaken. So we've made some commitments to improve that capacity. And as we've had lots of work done on that. So staff were comfortable making that recommendation. And it is the practice in other jurisdictions, such as Prince Edward County.
Thank you, sir. Thank you both, Deputy Mayor.
Just to follow up to that question, because it's a question that comes up on a regular basis. I'm sure that, I would expect the planning staff to say at one point to council, look, we're 5 years out of not being able to allocate any more, builds. It's time to do something about it. Would that not work in that way?
Director, that would be my expectation, Director.
Yes, I mean, right now, based on historical billing rate activity, we have about 10 years of billing permit activity available to us. And we've started the EA process, so it's going to take a few years. So I think we're doing just that. And things are in sequence fairly appropriate here. And in my preference is to make sure that we can give some kind of direction to developers, whether it's yes or no or somewhere in between. And in this case, we're recommending yes with lots of conditions. So that way they're confident that if they needed to do a pre-development agreement with us for the transfer of funds needed to see expanded capacity, then there's a framework for doing so. So I think through the draft approval, we can then, with the caveats that we've discussed, that then we can have a working dialogue about investing in our lagoon system.
You may.
Just a follow up to that. So the bottom line is council isn't agreeing to development without having the capacity to do so.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
It's a good discussion, but we had this discussion about many months ago about the capacity that we had. And it was your department that told us that we had 10 years and that based on what we had, I won't say on the books, but what was what it was looking like as far as the number of subdivisions and builds, and that we had 10 years. And I know we all were here when we had that discussion. I feel confident that that we're not going to be looking at plans if we can't service it. So I know we're having this discussion, but I think that we've had the discussion. So let's move on. I know there's, and while I've got the floor, I see some nice items in here too. The green space has been improved, it had been increased. It's not something that we're here to discuss tonight probably, but I see some action on some of a couple of the items that I requested and that you look at, and it's good. I think you're almost more than doubling what was on for green space, parkland type of thing. So things are still, if we have capacity, I think we need to move on this.
Thank you. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. My bottom line is I'm looking at 558 residential units. And then I read on page 248 that staff continue to monitor residual sanitary sewer capacity, and the proposed development will utilize infrastructure standards that better control flow and infiltration than historical rates. However, conservatively, the municipality applies the historical rates in formulating residual capacity. So the 10-year residual capacity has been calculated based on the average building rate of the recent years. This is the line that gets me. The proposed plan, and I know all about, we're going in phases, we're not guaranteeing anything, but if we make this decision now, the proposed plan, if fully developed tomorrow, would exceed that residual capacity. That scares me, making a decision like that.
Keep reading. To address this issue, draft conditions have been recommended that would allocate residual capacity only at the time of the execution of subdivision agreement.
I read that, and I prefaced that at the first of my thing, but for me, I'm not going to be on council, obviously, and 70% of the people sitting around this table aren't going to be on council. I don't feel comfortable making decisions for the next council with it. This is the biggest I've ever, in the municipality of Brighton, ever saw proposed, and I think it would be wise to pause at least until the next council can digest this. I don't know what their vision will be.
Right, thank you. Anything further from members of council? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Rundle Lane seems to be the only access from Main Street. Are there plans as to how to mitigate both construction / residential traffic in that area? We know at times in some of our subdivisions that it gets pretty tricky dealing with big trucks and little cars. Is there a plan as to how we're going to work around that?
Would you like to address that? Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Rowley. So yes, for phase 3, construction access would be down through Rundle. The intention of the phase plan is to try to clean up everything to the east of Rundle and then proceed into the phase 4 lands. With the phase 4 lands, there's frontage up on Main Street. There would be the potential option to punch a construction access down through that frontage onto Main Street to alleviate the construction access pressure on Rundle.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one comment on what was mentioned earlier on the residual capacity. I think the reason councillors are asking the question is because we don't currently have the capacity if it was all to be built out, but I like the conditions that are in there that would only be added at the time. But does that have any impact? Like, I know we're not allocating it, but is it going to impact any other small developments or developments for them getting allocations? Is that being, not allocated, but kind of held, knowing that if we approve 3 and 4, that, virtually we have lost that for other development?
Director?
Through the Mayor, as developments come on, will be kind of a first come, first served basis. And we'll continue to do our flow monitoring as well. So the form is based on our flow rates over the last 3 to 5 years. There's some options and timelines And as new development comes on, it's much more efficient. Our pipes are newer. We have low flow fixtures in them. And so some of the per capita liter quantities that of historic rates are very likely to go down. And MOE, Ministry of Environment and Conservation Parks, accept those lower revised numbers. So, as we continue to do our calculations going forward, it's very likely to look better each time. So it's a bit of a moving average, in other words.
And we've seen this even in this term of council, when infiltration was ceased, we saw capacity increase slightly. So it's not surprising that new infrastructure would be kinder to our plant, if you will.
Right, and because of our groundwater conditions here, there's some special conditions in this draft approval that there would be groundwater monitoring. And as we have done also with Brighton Meadows, to make sure that there's little risk that we'll have that inflow and infiltration that has been historically such an issue.
Thank you both. Councillor LeBlanc.
Worship. The term of council, before I got on council, I started reading some of their minutes and stuff, getting prepared for this. And with an engineer, John Martinello, at the time, he says at that time there was only a capacity of 156 homes. That asking questions, we grew to 800. Now we got a 10-year capacity. So which I thank you on. The question that I have is going to change topics because it's going to have to do with dust control. And in our dust control policy that we have, which we have in place, right, is there hydroseeding of all piles and large piles of dirt as they're being put there? Because that's one of the complaints that they all have on Cortland and Royal Gala, that they're getting dust coming from, the wind always goes from the west to the east, and their homes are getting filled with dust at all times. And the other one is their sidewalks and their driveways on the right-hand side or the north side of Cortland. When is it going to be? Is there a firm date before you go through that? That needs to be done before this development goes.
I think that was asked and answered already. That last question was asked and answered. Let's go to the dust control question though, Director.
It's fairly standard provision in any subdivision agreement that there be a construction management plan, and dust control is pretty much a standard condition. And so at the time of the subdivision agreement, we'll make sure the dust control matter is reflected in it. And we'll further, on the previous phases, we'll follow up and look at the subdivision agreement clauses there to look for that.
Thank you both. Councillor Bateman.
Thank you, Mayor. On page 3 of the report, it gives the total and the breakdown, and I can't remember who spoke to it when it says the semi and the singles and stuff. Of that 558 residential unit, what's the breakdown between phase 3 and phase 4? That's a combination of both, I'm assuming, that total of 558. And then my question to that is, do both phases have to be approved tonight? Can you not do phase 3 and then at a certain point you do phase 4, and then you're not dealing with that 558 and that whole residual capacity question?
Director?
Yeah, good question. Staff did look at that. And so phase 3 is 35 units total. And so the rest is 523 in phase 4. And the problem with doing one phase only is that there's a lot of servicing that has to come down Rundle Lane. So it's really, once you start putting storm and other major services down Rundle Lane, it's kind of the vertebrae for both phases.
Thank you both. Councillor LeBlanc. If you don't have a question, it's okay.
No, I'll think of a question. I'll let somebody else go to a question. I get.
Thank you.
Learn how to phrase this one.
All right, Councillor Rowley.
Thank you. So just a little bit to follow on what Councillor Bateman said. So at this stage, the developer is going to complete phase 2. And then they're going to complete phase 3 with infrastructure in place for phase 4 before they begin on phase 4. Is that what I'm understanding? Other than the infrastructure stuff. So complete the building, the sidewalks, everything on phase 2, do the 35 or however many units you said in phase 3 before they start phase 4 as far as construction and, as you said, punching in a construction road in order to work with that. Is that where we're going?
Who's fielding that one? Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Rowley. So yeah, as Mr. Walsh said earlier, phase 3 will not be registered until phase 2. It's a condition of draft approval until phase 2 sidewalk works are in. So that's been identified. And yeah, construction schedule, as we proposed, was to start with phase 3. Again, trying to clean up everything east, Rundle Lane and everything east, so that then we can focus operations over to the west.
Thank you both. Councilor Bateman?
Again, just a follow-up to my follow-up to Councilor Rowley's follow-up, just so I understand, because I think residents would ask, it will give the appearance that phase 4 is starting, because if I understood the director correctly, you're going to be bringing the infrastructure down through 4 to get to 3, correct? Is that how?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. So the infrastructure, so the lands to the west of Rundle Lane in phase 4, there's no infrastructure going in on that property. The infrastructure would go in down the west side of Rundle, finishing out Rundle, and then services to one block on phase 4. That's west of Rundle. It's the only block that fronts onto Rundle Lane.
And the infrastructure coming down the west side of Rundle Lane is the sort of the primary infrastructure that will tie the subdivision into the rest of the municipal infrastructure.
Yes, there's shared infrastructure between 3 and 4. Yeah.
Which is why you want to, I assume why you want to have this all done at once, because it doesn't make, from a cost effective standpoint, it doesn't make sense to service 35 units when you need to service 558 units.
The infrastructure will be extended to the west too.
Right.
Yeah. Through
Attached in.
phase 3.
Yeah, got it. Councilor Anderson.
With the retirement home moving along very well, Rundle Lane, if everything's coming down Rundle Lane, how would the timing and how does it work with, because Rundle Lane is on the west side of the retirement home, and it's a major part of that whole development there. I know you're about a year or near, even more than that, out to completing the retirement home. So where would you start, or can you start? Or based on what we're talking about, it doesn't sound like you could start, but can you start that infrastructure down Rundle Lane in the next year? Or do you need to, or do we need to?
Mr. Arm?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Anderson. Yeah, the schedule proposed right now would extend infrastructure down Rundle Lane. It has to go through the regulatory authorities for approval, both municipality through detailed design, Lower Trent needs its ministry ECA. So there's a process after draft approval where you go into the detailed design stage. So that needs to occur before that infrastructure goes down Rundle. But again, there's the interest is to move this forward and build more houses in Brighton.
Good. I just needed an answer on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor LeBlanc, have you figured out your wording?
Yes, I have. So this municipality paid to bring a water line across Butler Creek to access more water to the subdivision. So what you're saying is that new line for phase 3 is not sufficient. You have to come from Highway 2 to come down Rundle to attach to phase 3. And phase 3 is between, pocketed by houses on both sides. And you got a road going there. And you got Royal Gala coming here. Is that what you're saying?
Is there anyone from staff who can field that one? Because the water main was our project. It wasn't the developer's project.
I know.
Mr. Gooding?
That's correct. So the mayor to Council LeBlanc is we're trying to coordinate our Main Street water main engineering works with the development. So we're looking at upsizing and replacing the water main along Main Street and then tying it in to loop it through the development back through our loop. I don't believe that they were dependent on it. At least the studies didn't suggest that. If anything, the studies suggested that we had to put in pressure reducer valves on numerous homes in order to address the high pressure that already exists without the improved water main.
It was my understanding that if this development were to cease, we would have still required that looping.
That is correct.
Yeah, based on what had been built out to date.
That is correct.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Rowley had mentioned a road, a construction road. Can that be part of the agreement somehow? It's just, that's a concern that many people have. And just having that one main artery and all the trucks in, can we add that in there somehow? Is that something we can require?
Director?
Yeah, we commonly specify the submission of a construction plan, and that will specify where that road would go to avoid any, or minimize any interference with existing homes.
I just think because there are many existing homes there and it's a very large subdivision that it would be prudent of us to do that.
And it was the reason why Rundle Lane was chosen as the construction laneway for that western portion of the existing subdivision at the time.
So that can be specified when in a subsequent pre-servicing agreement. You have Brighton, you have the Butler Creek subdivision pre-servicing agreement on the agenda tonight. So I think we can find when that comes forward for, say, phase 3 for this, that we'll have a construction plan and construction route requirement in the agreement.
Anything further before I call the vote? Sure.
I just want to be clear when council is looking at any of these developments, the water wastewater problem is our problem, the municipality's problem, not the developer's problem. So if there's an issue there, we have to create the fix, not stop development, because we all need people know that people need homes to live in Brighton. So
I would concur with that, but it also provides opportunity for us to incent local developers to offer up a little more dollars and cents so that we can actually fix these problems. And I have no problem with that either, quite frankly, because Councillor LeBlanc.
Your worship, as myself, I have no more question. I have no problem with phase 3. I have a problem with phase 4. So for me, my vote, I would accept phase 3. Phase 4, I'd like to have it deferred until I can get more, because there wasn't enough time to digest everything in it. And all the changes and the amendments that you want from agriculture to zone, DEP, to green zone, to go through it. So, and I wanted to know more. The drawings aren't that well done. It doesn't show what the road allowances are, what the defers are, what the distance between the homes are. I don't see anything. I would gladly welcome phase 3. So I'm gonna, if it stands as is, I'll ask for recorded votes.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman.
It was mentioned on phase 2 a couple times, I think by Councillor Rowley and Councillor LeBlanc, that that'll be completed. And then I believe it was spoke that it would be referring to the sidewalks. When we say completed, does that mean done and then up for assumption, then we'll move on to phase 3? Because I know that question will come up if everything's not done. Why did we move to the next phase? I just want clarification on what completed means.
Director?
Well, typically, we have these subdivision agreements requiring certain works to be completed, and the manager of infrastructure and his staff would go and inspect and then sign off that these are completed. So in this case, with the draft approval on this, and the request comes forward for subdivision agreement for phase 3, then we would go through the conditions and say, oh, they have to complete the sidewalks, and Mr. Gooding and the staff will go out and make sure that the sidewalks are done.
Thank you all. Anything further from members of council? A recorded vote has been requested, Madam Clerk, and before I ask you to call that vote, I'll just make a brief comment. I appreciate staff's work on this. I think it's a responsible way of building this development out from a municipal perspective in terms of making sure that all the capacity is available as the development rolls out. So thank you for the creative thinking there, and we will continue to work with our development community to upgrade that sewage treatment plant so that we don't run into a problem during any development processes, we hope anyway. In my opinion, this is a really good example of housing affordability or housing attainability in the community with the mixed uses. And I just want to thank everyone for coming to the table on this one. And out of that statutory public meeting, all those comments seem to have been captured well by both proponent and the municipality. So my thanks. Madam Clerk, a recorded vote has been requested by Councillor LeBlanc.
Councillor Doug LeBlanc,
No.
Councillor Emily Rowley,
Yes.
Councillor Mary Tad,
No.
Deputy Mayor Laura Connect,
Yes.
Councillor Ron Anderson,
Yes.
No.
Yes.
that's been carried.
Thank you. Next planning report is with regard to consent and rezoning applications B12 2022, B13 2022, and Z09 2022, 85 Ontario Street, 95 Ontario Street, 97 Ontario Street. Mrs. Deck, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Thank you. The motion before me is moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council receives the staff report regarding consent application B12 2022 and B13 2022 and zoning bylaw amendment file number Z09 2022 regarding 85 Ontario Street, 95 Ontario Street, 97 Ontario Street. And further, that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands located in part of Lot 2, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 39R 14355 from Urban Residential 1 Zone and Future Development Zone to Urban Residential 4 Exception Number 3 Zone and Urban Residential 3 Zone. And further, that council grant provisional consent to applications B12 2022 and B13 2022, subject to the following conditions. Each condition shall be fulfilled no later than 2 years from the date of the mailing of the decision. The application for zoning bylaw amendment Z09 2022 is finally approved. That the applicant lay out and dedicate by deed to the required road authority to the satisfaction of the manager of operations a strip of land ensuring the desired right-of-way width between 26 meters and 36 meters along Ontario Street, along the frontage of both the new parcel and the retained portions of the road widening for road widening purposes. The conveyance referenced in condition 3C above shall be clear of any liens or encumbrances, all to the satisfaction of the manager of operations. For B12 2022, confirmation from the applicant's solicitor that the severed and benefiting lands will merge on title. For B12 2022, that the lands be subject to a drainage easement in favor of the parcel addressed as 85 Ontario Street. For B12 2022, the OLS indicate in writing to the Department of Planning and Development that no encroachments such as driveways, parking areas, fences, wells, or septic systems will result from the lot addition conveyances. For B12 2022, the solicitor for the applicant shall submit an undertaking to the municipality to the following effect. I hereby personally undertake to prepare and register an application to consolidate parcels for those lands being the severed lands herein and those lands being the benefiting lands herein, and provide to the municipality the registered application to consolidate parcels as soon as possible after registration of the severance transfer and designation of the new PIN to the severed lands. For B12 2022, that subsections 3 and 5 of Section 50 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or transaction involving the conveyed lands. That the conveyance of the lot addition may include respective abutting segments to each of the parcels addressed as 85 and 95 Ontario Street, subject to conditions applicable conditions herein and the payment of the standard consent fees. That all taxes on each of the lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the issuance of a certificate of official. That a digital copy of a registrable survey for the lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk. That geospatial data and the surveyed parcel fabric with respect to the severed and retained lands shall be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. That the owner provides the municipality a registrable description on a deed conveying the severed lands for use for the issuance of a certificate of official for consent. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next planning report is with regard to consent and rezoning applications B28, 2021, B29, 2021, B30, 2021, and Z18, 2021. Mrs. Deck, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Council Rowley, seconded by Council LeBlanc, that council deferred consent rezoning applications B28, 2021, B29, 2021, B30, 2021, and Z18, 2021 pertaining to 314 Whites Road from the July 20th, 2022 council planning meeting. And further, that council receives this revised staff report regarding consent applications B28, 2021, B29, 2021, and B30, 2021, and zoning bylaw amendment application Z18, 2021 for 314 Whites Road as prepared by the Planning and Development Department. And further, that council enacts a bylaw to rezone certain lands in part of lots 32 and 33, part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, concession 1 being parts 1, 2, and 3 on registrable plan 38R 4945 from extractive industrial exception number 6 zone to rural zone, rural residential zone, open space zone, and environmental protection zone. And further, that council direct the mayor and clerk to execute the development agreement pertaining to the recommendations and conclusions from the natural heritage and hydrologic evaluation provided in attachment 1. And further, that council enact a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the development agreement. And further, that council authorize the municipal solicitor through an acknowledgement direction agreement to register the enacted bylaw for the development agreement, including making any necessary revisions to legal descriptions, names, or undertakings as may be necessary. And further, that council grant provisional consent to applications B28, 2021, B29, 2021, and B30, 2021, subject to the following conditions. Each condition shall be fulfilled no later than 2 years from the date of the mailing of the decision. That application for zoning bylaw amendment Z18, 2021 is finally approved. That as required, the applicant lay out and dedicate by deed to the municipality of Brighton a strip of land ensuring a minimum of 12 meters from the center line of Whites Road along the frontage of the severed and retained lots, clear of encumbrances, unwanted trees, shrubs, building structures, and fences, all to the satisfaction of the manager of operations. That cash in lieu of parkland in the amount of $1,500 be paid to the municipality of Brighton. That applications for entrance permits for the severed lots are submitted and approved by the municipality. That a tree preservation and replanting plan be completed to the satisfaction of the municipality of Brighton and Lower Trent. That the applicant enter into a development agreement to implement the recommendations from the natural heritage and hydrologic evaluation and tree preservation and replanting plan. That all taxes on each of the lots be in compliance with municipal requirements prior to the issuance of a certificate of official. That a digital copy of a registrable survey for the lots and the appropriate deed transfer be prepared and deposited with the municipal clerk. That geospatial data of the surveyed parcel fabric with respect to the severed and retained lands shall be submitted to the satisfaction of the municipality. That the owner provides to the municipality a registrable description on a deed conveying the severed lands for use for the issuance of a certificate of official for consent. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Next report is with regard to pre-servicing agreement for file sub 2019-03. It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council, pardon me. Mr. Walsh, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight, sir?
Nothing further to add, Mayor?
I hope I didn't rush you.
No.
Thank
not
you.
at all.
It's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council receives a staff report dated August 24th, 2022, pertaining to the municipality entering into a pre-servicing agreement, AMR Investments Limited. And that council receive and accept the pre-servicing agreement and direct staff to provide a copy of the agreement for the applicants. And that staff be authorized to make necessary design revisions as may arise in the final review of drawings as may be necessary through final municipal engineering review. And that council enact the required bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the pre-servicing agreement on behalf of the municipality of Brighton coming into effect on the date of the signatures. And that the municipal solicitor be directed to register the pre-servicing agreement against the land subject to the draft approved subdivision. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Next report is with regard to rescinding bylaw for consent applications B06 2021 and B16 2021. Mrs. Stack, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a motion moved by Council Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect. That council receives the staff report dated August 24th, 2022, regarding a rescinding bylaw for consent applications as prepared by staff of the Planning and Development Department, and further that council enact a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to rescind bylaw 107, 2021. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And mercifully, our final staff report is with regard to site plan control for file SP01 2021. Mrs. Deck, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
No, I do not, Mayor.
Thank you for that. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Tadman, that council receives this staff report dated August 24th, 2022, regarding a rescinding bylaw for site plan control application as prepared by staff of the Planning and Development Department, and further that council enact a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to rescind bylaw 013, 2022. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion's carried. That brings us to bylaws. Our first bylaw is with regard to zoning bylaw amendment Z18 2021. It's moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140, 2002, as otherwise amended, of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton as it applies to the lands located at 314 Whites Road, described as part of lots 32 and 33, part of road allowance between 32 and 33, concession 1 being parts 1, 2, and 3 on registered plan 38R4945. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Next bylaw is with regard to bylaw amendment Z04 2022. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Deputy Mayor Connect. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a development agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Andrew and Krista Hunt for the property located at 314 Whites Road, legally described as part of lots 32 and 33, part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, concession 1 being parts 1, 2, and 3 on registered plan 38R4945, Municipality of Brighton, as in accordance with subsection 51 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Madam Clerk?
You just said that that was for Z04 2022, but it was not. It was still 8.1. So it's still for Andrew Hunt.
I apologize.
That's fine.
So this is a bylaw with regard to Z18 2021. Thank you for that. My apologies, because you tried to explain this to me. Yeah. So any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Now we go to Z04 2022 with a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140, 2002, as otherwise amended, of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton, as it applies to the lands located at 356 Whites Road on vacant parcel legally described as part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, concession 1, closed by CL 39807 and part of Lot 32, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 39R 10408, and part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, Concession 1, closed by CL 39807, and part of Lot 32, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 38R 5364, except Part 1 of Registered Plan 39R 10408. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And this is with regard to the same zoning bylaw amendment. It's moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a development agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Cecil McCoy and Laurel McCoy for the property located at 356 Whites Road and vacant parcel legally described as part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, Concession 1, closed by CL 39807 and part of Lot 32, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 39R 10408, and part of road allowance between lots 32 and 33, Concession 1, closed by CL 39807, and part of Lot 32, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 38R 5364, except Part 1 of Registered Plan 39R 10408, Municipality of Brighton as in accordance with subsection 51 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P 13. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. Now, bylaw with regard to zoning bylaw amendment B12, 2022, B13, 2022, Z09, 2022. Moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 to amend bylaw number 140, 2002, as otherwise amended of the corporation of the municipality of Brighton as it applies to the lands located at 97 Ontario Street, described as part of Lot 2, Concession 1, being Part 1 on Registered Plan 39R 14355. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. A motion to rescind bylaw 107, 2021, moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading, finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to rescind bylaw 107, 2021, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Kevin Oates and 952849 Ontario Limited to implement the recommendations of an environmental impact study and to install water and sanitary services for the lands described as CBF part of Lot 5, Plan 28, and Block 49 on Plan 39M 938. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Being none opposed, that motion's carried. And a bylaw to rescind bylaw 013, 2022, moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading, and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to rescind bylaw 013, 2022, authorizing the mayor and the clerk to execute an agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and ExploreNet Communications, Inc., regarding a telecommunications tower on the property located in Part Lot 28, Concession 5, being Part 1 on 39R 11504, in the municipality of Brighton in the county of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? There being none opposed, that motion is carried. Of course. And you've given me to me in, do you want, it should be 8.6.1 and then 2 and then 3. Okay. Just want to make sure. So this is 8.7. No, this is 8.6 still. Sorry. This is Applewood Phase 3-4 official plan. Got it. And there are 3 motions with regard to for 3 different bylaws. It's moved by Deputy Mayor Connect, seconded by Council LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to adopt an amendment to the official plan of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw under the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend bylaw number 140, 2002, as otherwise amended of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton, as it applies to lands located at no civic address described as part of Lot 21, Part 1, Plan 39R 13304, and Plan 39R 13304, part of Lot 5, Concession 1, Registered Plan 28. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a pre-servicing agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and AMR Investments Incorporated regarding a pre-servicing agreement for Phase 1 of Plan of Subdivision File Number Sub 2019-03 on a property located in Parts 1, 2, and 3, Plan 39R 11840, Part 1, Plan 39R 9894, part of Part 1, Plan 39R 10910, part of Parts 1 to 4, Plan 38R 1408, part of lots 29 to 31 west of Ontario Street, Registered Plan 28, part of lots 3 and 4, Concession 1 in the Municipality of Brighton in the County of Northumberland. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Now we come to the item that we've added with regard to Mike and Lori Van Harlem. It's moved by Councillor Tadman, second by Councillor Bateman. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a development agreement between the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton and Mike and Lori Van Harlem for the properties legally described as part of Lot 28, Concession B, being Part 2 on Registered Plan 39R 14501 and part of Lot 27 and 28, Concession B, being Part 3 on Registered Plan 39R 14501, Municipality of Brighton, in accordance with subsection 51 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P 13. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Brings us to question period. Does anyone in the gallery have any questions with any item that appeared on tonight's agenda? I don't see anyone who continues to join us on Zoom, so I'm assuming none there. Thank you. We have no closed session this evening, which brings us to our confirmatory bylaw. It's moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on August 24th, 2022. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. A motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that the August 24th, 2022 planning meeting adjourn at 8:30 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you, everyone. It's a bit of a miracle that we're out of here at 8:30, quite frankly.